Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Shelby of Shelby and the Book Club, and in today's video we are going to talk all about all of the books that Shelby and the Book Club read for the year of 2021. Now, I don't know if you guys noticed or not, but I had a theme and I didn't really tell anyone what the theme was because I wanted to see if anyone noticed. Towards the end of the year, when I had done some interviews, some podcasting, things like that, I had kind of spilled the beans, but no one said anything about it. So I'm going to assume that you guys didn't notice. But if you would like to hear about all of the book club picks for last year and what the theme of the year was, stay tuned. So first I want to say, if you see me looking down, it is because I have my iPad here with the list of books, because there's so many books in my mind. Between now having the bookstore and constantly talking about books, constantly reading books, it's really put me in a place where I'm like, did I read that or was I talking about it? Did I read that or did someone suggest that I read it? Like, my mind is all over the place. So I have, if I'm looking down, that's why. So first let's talk about the theme. I think I'm probably going to keep up with like keeping the theme a secret, and seeing if you guys notice, because it's more fun for me, and yeah, it's just a fun little game, I guess. And I mean, now the cat's out the bag that I have a theme, so now maybe you guys will pay a little bit more attention to what books is she picking? Why is she picking these books? What do they all have in common? Because it could be anything. It could be tropes. It could be the type of author. It could be, I don't know, the color of the cover that's in the covers, right? Like, they all have a speck of blue on the cover. It could be anything, with the way that my mind works. So I want to see if y'all noticed. So the theme for 2021 was Black female authors. Every book that we read for Shelby and the Book Club in the year of our Lord 2021 was by a Black woman, which is super important to me. So when I started the book club, it was because one, I wanted more book friends. I wanted to talk to more people about books. I wanted all of that. I craved that. But also, it happened around the time when George Floyd was murdered. And there was something that really bothers me, but we can talk about it in depth another day. But it was like, everybody was like, oh, books. I want to read books about Black people now because George Floyd was murdered, and that was supposed to do something, I guess. Which reading does a lot. It's really important, but I just felt like there were all of these people that were trying to claim that they didn't know where to find Black authors. So now it is my business to introduce them to you, however I can. My goal is to diversify your reading however I can, in whatever way, shape, or form that I can. I'm going to diversify your reading. So I'm here to say, those of you that have reached out to me or joined my book club for that particular reason, I have introduced you to 12, and not only 12, if you follow the book club, then I've definitely exposed you to more than 12 Black authors. But if you followed along with the book club throughout the year, you have officially been introduced and read books by 12 different female authors. And honestly, it's actually more than 12, because 2 months, for November and December, there were 2 book club picks. So if you read both of them, 12, 13, 14, so then 14 Black female authors, which is amazing. So now let's get into the books. We've read some pretty good books for the book club. There were a few that I'll go into that I didn't necessarily like, but for the most part, all of them I liked. And I will try to do these in chronological order. I was not going through this messy bookshelf to find the individual books, so I will put a picture of each book on the screen so that you guys can see. Excuse me. Oh, Jesus. so that you guys can see what the book looks like if you are new here and you did not participate with the book club last year. So first on the list, we have A Girl is a Body of Water by Jennifer Mansabuga Makumbi. I absolutely love this book. I'm learning about myself that I like books that are sagas, and this was definitely a saga. So it follows the main character, who is the girl, through a bunch of different phases of her life, as she, lives in the village, lives outside of the village. I'm not going to go into too much detail about each book, because I don't want to ruin it for you guys. I want you guys to read it. So it just goes through her life. She, if I remember correctly, there was a bit there where she didn't have either one of her parents. She's being raised by her grandparents. There's a bit about polyamory in there, and village life, where her grandfather has multiple wives, or had multiple wives. It really was a story about a generation of women that all connected back to our main character. And it was beautiful how all of these women take part in her life, how they all affect her somehow, how the things that happen to our grandmothers and our aunts and our mothers and all of that generations before us affect the things that happen to us today. I really, 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 really enjoy when authors point out generational trauma. I don't think we focus on that enough as a people, as Black people, as Black women. The things that our mothers went through, the things that we go through, it affected our mothers. It somehow affects us because it affects their point of view, how they in turn raise us, how we in turn go on to raise our daughters and sons, and so on and so forth. So A Girl is a Body of Water it was a really good book. So I believe I rated it a 4 or 5 star on Goodreads. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll put that on the screen as well, when I put it on the screen to begin with. I'll try to do that for each book. So February, we read The Coldest Winter Ever by Sister Soldier. I hated every second of reading this book as an adult. I hated it. I was miserable. I remember reading The Coldest Winter Ever as like a 13 or 14-year-old, probably when I had no business reading it. And it's funny how your perspective changes as you get older, right? I mean, hopefully it does. Hopefully you are still not thinking like a 14 or 15-year-old. But it's really funny how when I was younger and I was reading about Winter, I just thought she was so cool. Like, Winter had all of this freedom. Winter could go out and hang out with boys if she wanted to, blah, 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 and like do all of this crazy stuff. And as an adult, Winter needed real parents. Winter was going through it in a very bad way, and I'm grateful that I have a mama that cares about me and wasn't letting me run in the streets at 15, 16, fighting and having the sex and doing all of this stuff. Oh my gosh. I really thought that maybe I was going to love this. And the reason that I picked it for February is because that's when Life After Death, the sequel to The Coldest Winter Ever, came out. And that was also as well trash. Upset. I was so upset. I was not happy at all. And I feel bad because it kind of put me in one of those thought processes of maybe I shouldn't have read it again so that I could have held on to the joy that it brought me when I was a kid. Like, it's really one of those books that I like avidly remember reading as a kid, right? And a lot of books similar to it that I also read, around the same time, that now I'm just like, some things you got to leave in the past. Some things, it was like when your ex-boyfriend shows his head again and you're like, oh, he a little, they done cleaned him up. He got a good job now and he, seemed like he got some sense. Don't go back, sis. It's a trap. It's a trap. And that is how I felt. That is totally how I felt about this book. Oh my gosh. I was so upset. A girl was upset. For March, we read No Heaven for Good Boys by Keisha Bush. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It was on my list of favorites. If you've seen my favorite video for 2021, it is a sad story. I'm not even gonna hold you. I'm not gonna lie to you and say that it wasn't a sad story. It was a sad story. It tells the story of Ibrahima and his cousin, and they are sent to live with I can't remember the exact name of what this man's title was, but basically he was supposed to be teaching them the Quran. So from the age of like 5 or 6 up into, again, my memory, this was last March, just about a year ago. I want to say it was supposed to be like for 5 or 6 years. They were supposed to stay with this man and learn the Quran, like be doing holy things. The whole time he was mistreating them, sexually abusing them, doing all of these things that their parents did not sign up for, and nobody knew about it. And Keisha Bush did an amazing job at transporting the reader. I felt like I was one of the boys. I felt like I was going through their trials and tribulations with them, even though they were very young characters. It very much was, I could relate. When they were scared, I was scared. I felt like I was there with them, and that is why it was really one of my favorite books of last year. I really enjoy when authors can transport you. There's a scene in the book where Ibrahima's mother realizes what's going on, and she's not getting support from anyone, not her husband, not her husband's family or anything like that, and she knows that her child is in danger, and she's trying to figure out how to get her kid back alive. And when I tell you, like, heart-wrenching, it was like I felt like I was almost like I was watching a movie. That's how well she transports the reader. I can't wait to read other books by her. It was truly, truly, truly phenomenal. Now, April, we read How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House. I'm sorry, y'all just heard that. We just gonna keep that in there. This was not on my, it wasn't one that was memorable for me. And I'm realizing with this one and with what we read for May, hold on one second, let me go backwards. Yeah, for this book and for what we read for May, which is These Ghosts Are Family, that I think I may just have an issue with the way Caribbean authors in general tell stories. I think it might be Caribbean literature that I just am not with, which is fine. Things happen. But How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House is a story of a woman who, it's kind of like a mystery in a sense. There are all of these different characters that are connected some way, somehow, and we follow the story that is led by the lead character and how she, raised by her grandmother, doesn't really know where her mother is or her parents, so to say. And it kind of goes through her life story, how all of these different things are connected. And the reason that I didn't necessarily enjoy it is because I felt like there were things missing. Like there was so much about the backstory of some of the characters that I felt like the actual story, like I didn't get the closure that I needed. Does that make sense? So it wasn't my favorite, but some of you may like it if you really, really, really are into Caribbean authors, and stories that take place in the Bahamas, Jamaica, things of that descent, like the West Indies, then I would definitely say read this book. And the book that we read for May, which is These Ghosts Are Our Family. Another book that I really, really thought that I was going to enjoy via the synopsis. When I read the synopsis, I was like, oh, this is going to be really, really good. And then when I read it, again, it was like this, it's the story of this girl or this guy who basically faked his death and pretends to be someone else all of his life, and like leaves his children and his wife behind in Jamaica. And then it's like telling his story when he meets like one of the kids that he left behind, and like all of this stuff that like I really, really wanted to love it, and it kind of just it 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 dropped the ball. Like I wasn't super impressed. I wasn't super impressed at all. But again, if you looking for Caribbean authors, if you like Caribbean books, I think How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House and These Ghosts Are Family. How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House is by Sherry Jones, and These Ghosts Are Family is by Macy Card. I think you guys would really, really, really enjoy those if those are your type of books. But like I said, they have a mystery feel to them. Very well written. I just felt like there was something, like there was closure that I was looking for that I was not getting in both books. Heavy reads, but there's that. Now, for June, we read 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. Have I told you that this is a Tia Williams stand account? Let me tell you, that book is so motherfucking good. Why have you not read it yet? What are you waiting for? What are you waiting? Seriously. What are you waiting for? 7 Days in June is a story about two characters who fell in love when they were in high school. It was definitely a trauma bond, but they fell in love when they were in 7 days while they were in high school. They ran away together for 7 days, and then on the 7th day something happens, and then they don't see each other again for about 10 years or so, I believe. And over this 10-year span, they are both authors, so they have these books, and they've been secretly writing to and about each other in these books. Oh my god, it was almost like sexy, like write about me secretly, you know. Very decent smut, if that's something that you're into. Very, very decent smut in this book. But I think there's so many things that I loved about this book. I don't even really know where to begin. I kind of want to read it again. I kind of want to read it again. It was realistic to me. It was realistic to me. Even the part about them like secretly writing to each other in books, which is kind of far-fetched, which I feel like romance should have that aspect in it. It was realistic. It portrayed two Black people that are very high in their fields, that have regular lives, that have experienced things, and those things are the reason why they do things in their lives the way that they do. It portrayed a Black man in not this funky way, which was important to me. Like it portrayed a Black man, his name was Shane. It portrayed him in a way where he was vulnerable, but he was still a man. Like he had a past, but he wasn't this scary shut down dude. He was just trying to figure it out. And what does that mean for Black men, right? He was vulnerable. I cannot get enough of 7 Days in June. I cannot get enough of 7 Days in June. I cannot get enough of 7 Days in June. I can't. I absolutely love that book. So much so that it almost convinced me to read romance. It has almost convinced me to become the lover of romance books. I love 7 Days in June, and I will read anything else by Tia Williams. I will. It is what it is. So moving on to July, we read The Rib King by Lady Hubbard, which was a really interesting book. It kind of put me in the mind of Deacon King Kong by Walter Mosley. Jesus Christ, by James McBride. James McBride and Walter Mosley are my two favorite Black male authors. And in my mind, they are the same person. Maybe I'll put a picture up of both of them right here so that you can see that they could be cousins. They could be. But anyway, it really did put me in the mind of Deacon King Kong with the way that it flowed. It was a very interesting book. It tells the story of the Rib King. He had been working in this house where he was the butler, came up with this sauce, the sauce ended up being sold, and it kind of just goes through the trials and tribulations of that sauce being sold, the dynamic amongst the Black staff in this household. It touches on racism. It was a really interesting story. I think it was an enjoyable read. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't like it didn't do to me what 7 Days in June did, but also it could have just been that 7 Days in June had me on a high, and I was expecting the next book to have me also as well on said high. And it's not that the book wasn't good, it just didn't do what 7 Days in June did. Does that make sense? But it was a good book. So that's what we read for July. Ooh, in August we read The Cutting Season by Attica Locke, and it was okay. It wasn't terrible, but it was just okay. I feel like what I didn't enjoy about the story was that there was a whole bunch of a whole lot of details that were getting us nowhere. That's what I felt like. And maybe that's what thrillers and mysteries are, and maybe they're not my thing. But it was a lot of it was just like a lot of information that I constantly found myself saying, like, why do I need to know this? Or what are we talking about? Who are these people? Oh, that's them, the people from a couple chapters ago. Okay, how we what are we talking about? So it is a story about a woman who lives on a plantation that is now like open for tours and stuff like that, and there's a murder that kind of coincides with something that happened to who we find out is one of her ancestors when he was a slave living on that plantation. When I really feel like the two things didn't really connect, really. I don't know. It was okay. It was okay. I feel like it made me feel like I want to read more thriller mystery, like in this type of genre, just to see what else is out there, particularly by Black women. Because it was interesting, and I liked the concept of like something happening and then there being a tie to something that happened to a slave all these years ago. That sounds interesting to me, because again, it goes back to me saying like, oh, I want to talk more about generational trauma and things that have happened all of these years ago that now affect the things that are happening today. I really, really wish I wanted to love it, and it was okay. In September, we were supposed to read The Other Black Girl, and that didn't happen because so many people had so many yucky things to say about The Other Black Girl. And I just was like, I need to read that one by myself. So I picked up The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin, and I can't really tell you what it was about because I don't know what I read. I read this book and it made me feel dumb. So it is a fantasy. It is a duology. People seem to love it. I was reading it. I couldn't really pick up on the magic system. I couldn't really pick up on the characters. It was just a lot happening, and like it made me feel stupid. The Killing Moon by M.K. Jemisin made me feel dumb. So there was that. In October, we read Witches Steeped in Gold, and we had a book discussion on my birthday with my mom, which I absolutely loved, and I would love to do more of that with her. As some of you know, I get my love of reading from my mother, so if I could read more books with her while I still have time with her, that would make my dear heart happy. But Witches Steeped in Gold is a story about two girls that are basically fighting for the throne. So there's one trying to overthrow her mother. There's another one that everyone thought was dead. And the throne is rightfully hers, and they're fighting for the throne. They come in cahoots. I really enjoyed the magic system. It really gave me, what is the name of that book? Children of Blood and Bone. It kind of gave me those vibes. But what I really enjoyed about it was that it has a Jamaican background to it. So like the audiobook was read in patois. It was so cool. And I look forward to the second book coming out. And like, I'd pick up the second book. You guys know that I'm not really a big fan of YA books. It is not my jam. It's not my jam at all. But I really enjoyed this one, and like I said, I'd be down to read the second book in that, because now I need to know what happens, right? This past year, I will say that I've read a lot more fantasy than I have prior, and it's made me realize that I am absolutely a huge fan of fantasy. I like the magic, I like the dragons, I like the witches and the vampires and the werewolves and all of that, okay? Because I think I'm one of them anyway. So that was that was fun. That was fun to read for me. That was a fun read. And again, like I said, I'm sorry, I'm looking down to make sure that I got the rest of the books. That I got the rest of the books set up here for me to talk about. I'm sorry, y'all. That was really fun for me to read. And like I said, I incorporated my mom. We also brought the Gigi Bean show back that night with my mom, myself, Jimmy, and Adela of the Lola Bean Lauren Co. So that was super exciting. So that was really fun. I'd love to discuss more books with my mom. That was cool. And like I said, I look forward to reading the second book in that series. I don't know if it's going to be like more than 2 or whatever, but I know that there's a second one coming out. And I feel like at the time I kind of highlighted that I enjoyed it, but there are things that I don't enjoy about YA books that happened in that book. But thinking back now, it was a decent read. It was decent. So speaking of Jimmy, Adela's husband, my wonderful brother, Jimmy the model, in November, there were 2 books. So the first one that we read is called Blackbirds in the Sky by Brandy Colbert. Oh, wait, did I tell y'all? I think I said it. Okay. If I didn't, the author for Witches Heathen Gold was on the screen. I'm sorry. I got confused. Anyway, Blackbirds in the Sky by Brandy Colbert. Jimmy and I did a live reading for that. So that book was about the Tulsa Race Massacres. And it was a phenomenal read. It made me realize that I need to read more nonfiction. And I kind of have it in my mind that every month I want to pick up a nonfiction as a part of my TBR. So for January, I'm reading Will. For February, it'll be something else. But it was about the Tulsa Race Massacre, and it goes into a lot of detail. Now, this is also considered a YA book, and it tells the history of Oklahoma, of a bunch of information that I had never heard before in my life. It did a really good job at breaking down what led up to the Tulsa Race Massacre. Because I think a lot of times people like to say like, oh, this was just one-off. Like, no. This wasn't the only all-black town that was flourishing the way that it was. There were many more that I had never heard of that I learned about from this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would suggest the audiobook if I had to suggest anything, because it can be a lot reading it, taking in all of this information. The audiobook is maybe only 5.5 hours, if that, and it was phenomenal. The next book that we read was My Monticello by Jocelyn Nicole Johnson. So the reason that we read both of these books in the month of November is because, one, they were super small, but two, they kind of go hand in hand. My Monticello was about a group of people fleeing basically like a race war that was going on in town, and they end up at Monticello, which is Thomas Jefferson's plantation. And one of the characters is a descendant of his. And I enjoyed aspects of this book. So it's technically a novella. There is a story in the front of it called, hold on one second, let me look it up, because that was like my favorite part of that was like one of my favorite parts of the book. My Monticello. Because there's a short story in here. Control Negro is what it's called, which is one of the first stories in there, and it was phenomenal. It was super phenomenal. Like, it brings up things that I had never necessarily thought about before, perspective about Black men. It was good. What I didn't enjoy about My Monticello was I felt like there were all of these stories about race, and then we get to the My Monticello, and it was like about a girl that was pregnant and she didn't know. Like, they were on this plantation and there was difficulties with that. Okay, cool, as they were trying to survive. But then she was like having this inner dialogue where she was confused about whether or not she was pregnant by her boyfriend, who was white, or this other guy who was Black. And I was just like, I didn't really understand what the point of the story was. I didn't understand exactly what it was that she was trying to, what exactly she was trying to get us to see. So again, it wasn't my favorite. There were good parts of it, but I was just like, okay, now what? Like, now what? What are we talking about? Why? I don't understand. So for December, we were supposed to have 2 books. I only read one of them because mid-November-ish, maybe even before that. Like, I haven't really been feeling good since after my birthday, to be honest. But mid-November-ish through December, up until now, I've been on again, off again, sick, going through it, whatever. So we read, the 2 book picks were Their Eyes Are Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston and Feed the Soul by Tabitha Brown. I read Feed the Soul by Tabitha Brown, which was phenomenal. Oh, the audiobook to that book was so good. There were so many gems. There were so many things that she said that I loved. Just hearing her voice, it was like a warm hug while I was sick and in the bathroom crying. I think I mentioned this in my wrap-up video. Like, I was in the bathroom, super sick, super scared, not really sure what was wrong with me or why I was getting worse after I had been getting better. And her voice was really like a hug in a time and space where I didn't want to like freak my mother out, you know? So there was that. And then Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Are Watching God is one of my favorite books ever. It is actually on the list of what my comfort reads are when I feel like I'm in a slump. If you guys want to see a video about that, about the books that I comfort read, let me know. But that is definitely one of them, especially the audiobook. It is amazing to listen to. So I wanted to kind of go out with a bang with Zora Neale Hurston because she's really one of my favorites. And as someone that is very, very deep rooted in spirituality, we all know that she is a hoodoo staple. I absolutely love her, and what she stood for and the things that she wrote about, and her writing is phenomenal. But like I said, definitely, 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 definitely a comfort listen. Definitely one of my favorites. So that is everything that we read in 2021. Those are what, 14 female Black authors that you can pick from to read from. Now you have them. You don't ever have to say that you don't know where to find Black female authors from anymore, because I gave you 12 pretty unique ones. Zora Neale Hurston was the only one that was like a classic. All the rest of them, it was either their debut or it came out fairly recently, like within the last few years or so. So yeah, that was what we read. I'm very curious to see if you guys can guess what the theme for 2022 is. And this will be our running thing. I plan to do this video at the end of every year or the beginning of, the year for the previous year. You guys get what I'm saying. Just so we can go through and we can see what the theme was. If you knew, if you guessed, tell me in the comments. If there are any other Black authors, women authors in particular that you know of that I didn't mention here that you want to, highlight in the comments, so be it. I love book recommendations. It's the only thing that I like to get unsolicited. Everything else, keep to yourself. But yeah, other than that, if no one has told you today, I love you, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.